We'll jump into today's episode right after this announcement. For over 13 years, something remarkable has been happening. Rural hospitals and other small healthcare organizations that have partnered with Capstone have been achieving results and forming workplace cultures that even we are blown away by. It is truly a game changer when rural hospitals are the provider of choice and employer of choice so they can keep care local and margins strong. Far more healthcare organizations need to experience what's possible. That's why we're stepping forward in a bigger way, expanding our team of experts, expanding our capabilities by adding a strategic planning division to expand our ability to help even more rural hospitals and other healthcare organizations in 2026 and beyond. Capstone will continue to be the partner that small healthcare organizations can count on to meet them where they're at and guide them towards a stronger future. You can learn more at capstoneleadership.net. Pre-planning the full year of major events and activities that are grounded in these execution systems is one of the highest leverage leadership moves we know. This eliminates inconsistency, it protects momentum, and it ensures that the organization actually executes its improvement and growth initiatives.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
So glad you're tuned in today for another episode of Culture Change RX. It is me, Sue Tetzlaff, co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions, and I'm here with one of those solo episodes we call a Culture Bite. And today's episode is on the topic of pre-planning your healthcare organization's year for 2026. So this isn't about strategic planning per se or about goal setting. As an example, this is about setting up a cadence of purposeful activities that your organization operates on year after year. So it becomes a cadence of purposeful activities and cycles and systems that keeps your organization moving forward year after year, keeping that momentum of improvement and growth going on and on. So you've heard us say this on the podcast over and over again since we started the podcast almost 2 years ago, is that we've really adopted this definition that culture is, this is how we do things around here. So you can imagine that setting up a cadence or a calendar of purposeful activities really becomes one of the foundational ways that an organization can make sure that the most important things do happen year after year. And so the background of this is that staff, they want reliability, right? And nothing builds trust faster than leaders who run their organization on a dependable rhythm year after year. So everyone knows what's coming and what matters most. So if you really want to know what an organization truly values, don't just look at their mission statement. Look at its calendar. What gets scheduled gets done, and what gets done shapes the culture, right? This is how we do things around here. So when improvement depends on motivation, it often fades, right? When it depends on memory, it often fails. When it runs on a cycle, protected time, planned events, predictable activities, it truly does become unstoppable. Our partner organizations, time and time again, show us the power of these rhythms, these cycles. So the problem that's solved when we create and calendarize our year ahead of key activities, key events, is that we put a kink in that start stop culture or rhythm that a lot of organizations get into, right? They have these great ideas followed by great inconsistency. They have training this quarter, but not the next. Leadership rounding happens until it doesn't. Employee engagement efforts spike before surveys, then fade. Strategic priorities get set, then overshadowed by urgencies, right? So organizations often, whether it's healthcare or otherwise, they have this problem of start stop. They get going and then it just stops, right? And so the impact of that is that leaders lose credibility, teams lose clarity, improvement obviously slows and growth slows, the culture becomes unpredictable, and staff really start to feel that everything is flavor of the month. So, the antidote to this problem of starting and stopping is cycle based consistency. And this is really grounded in systems. You know, also, if you've been a listener of the podcast, that we're all about execution systems. This is how we lead around here. This is how we team around here. This is how we achieve around here. And this is how we change around here. So, these four systems embedded in each one of them are key events and activities. And they happen on a cadence, a very purposeful cadence, whether that's annually, semi annually, quarterly, monthly, bi weekly, weekly, daily. So that is the antidote to this starting and stopping is to have this system based cadence of activity where we're cycling over and over again, creating that consistency. And that really takes a pre planned calendar of these foundational events and activities. And truly, pre planning the full year of major events and activities that are grounded in these execution systems is one of the highest leverage leadership moves we know. This eliminates inconsistency, it protects momentum, and it ensures that the organization actually executes its improvement and growth initiatives. So, organizations that pre plan on a system based calendar never lose momentum. In fact, they compound it. And if you didn't know it, I am a data geek. And so for almost 14 years now, for dozens of organizations, we've been tracking the change year after year of data, improvement data, quality service, people data, growth, finance data for small and rural healthcare organizations. And what we know is that having a process like this ensures that cadence of continuous improvement and growth. And the data shows organizations getting better and better and better over time, growing and growing over time. So, the big idea here is to have a calendar that is your organization's commitment. So, this calendar becomes your commitment. And when you honor this commitment, you build trust and you build momentum and you build predictability in your organization. So, every high performing healthcare organization I know has a cycle of activities that repeat year after year. The dates may shift slightly and you may adjust some of the activities based on study adjust to make them more effective and to optimize them. But the cycle of activities itself never stops. So many of you have heard about the analogy of having a jar and having a pile of rocks, some very big, some smaller, all sorts of sizes. And the idea is that you can fit more rocks in the jar if you start by putting the big rocks in first, and then you add, this a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller, all the way down to the smallest ones that you have to fill in the cracks. So, when an organization is setting up their annual calendar of these purposeful events and activities for the upcoming year, It really is similar to that, right? Where we put in the big rocks first, and that would be what happens annually. So, things that might happen annually are your annual evaluations, your annual strategic plan updates, your annual goal setting, your annual employee survey. So anything that happens annually, you can calendarize that first. That's a big rock. You want it to happen every year. And usually there's a cadence or a time frame of when that happens each year. So get that on the calendar first. And then we put in our semi-annual activities. And in the case of our partner organizations, we recommend semi-annual all-employee training events. And this is an opportunity for all of the employee-driven teams to bring their educational efforts forward to all staff related to the work their teams are doing that are highly aligned employee-driven efforts towards top strategic priorities, usually people, service, and quality. And so those semi-annual events get on the calendar next. And then what gets on the calendar is your quarterly activities. And that might be your quarterly leadership training, your quarterly CEO town hall meetings, your quarterly word of mouth campaigns, updating your quarterly action plans of your teams and your department goals. So those are your next biggest rocks, are those quarterly activities. So once you have your annual, semi-annual, and quarterly activities calendarized for your upcoming year, then you can move into the monthly activities. So a little bit smaller rocks here, but important rocks to put in the jar. And that would be things like leader accountability meetings, monthly campaigns from the teams, such as communication or behavior standards of the month that supplement the semi-annual employee training. So we have training and campaigning. And then we have maybe monthly new hire orientation, monthly department managers meeting, those kind of things. So what are the things that we are going to commit to on a monthly basis that keeps our momentum going, our improvement and growth going? So what are those monthly key activities that are foundational and key to that kind of progress? And then we can move into the weekly and daily activities. So weekly activities may be a Friday 5 communication, either at an organization and or a department level. It could be weekly senior leader rounding. And then when it comes to daily activities, it could be the scheduling of daily huddles. When are those going to happen? Daily safety briefings. Are we making any adjustment to what time those happen each day? So now you can see that after we've gotten through the biggest rocks, such as the annual, the semi-annual, the quarterly, now the monthly, weekly, daily, once we've calendarized all of that for the year, then any ad hoc PRN things that we need to add that come up in the year can be added in around those things that are already in our jar, right? So the things that are in our jar that we put on our calendar, those big rocks in the jar, all of the rocks in the jar, big or small, we've committed to them and we're going to honor them in the year to come. And we can all count on it, right? We can all count on it. That creates that trust, that predictability, and definitely that momentum that each organization needs if it doesn't want to stagnate or slide backwards. Because predictability really is the payoff, right? And predictability creates great culture and trust. Staff feel stability. I know what's coming. I know they'll follow through. Leaders become credible because they close that say-do gap. We say we're going to do this. It's on the calendar. Those rocks are in the jar. We've committed to them. And every time we honor those, we close that say-do gap. We say it and we do it. And that builds trust. It obviously builds momentum. Improvement doesn't stall just because emergencies happen, and they do, because these systems, this calendar, this cadence of activity, we keep it running. It's on the calendar. We honor it. We do it. This creates a lot of efficiency too, right? We can plan for it more efficiently. We can plan our time around it. If there's prep work or resources needed, we can align those to these things we plan for. This creates less chaos, fewer surprises, fewer last minute scrambles. In essence, everyone can prepare emotionally and operationally. Creating this type of cadence in your calendar also creates strategic clarity because the things that you're doing, right? These activities, when we're doing leadership training every quarter, not only is it the act of doing leadership training every quarter, we're creating a learning culture, right? But we're also aligning the leadership training each quarter to our top strategic priorities. And so by having this calendar of activities and aligning it with our strategies, we're getting obviously a lot of progress and momentum towards the execution of those strategies, but also it prompts us to have clarity around them, right? So the organization not only stays focused on the right activities, but the right things that those activities entail. And dozens of organizations over the last almost 14 years have shown us better results from adopting a process of planning like this. Higher staff engagement, lower turnover, improved patient experience, stronger financial performance, and in the end, better community trust in their healthcare organization. Because when the organization moves on a cycle, a rhythm, a cadence of continuous improvement and growth like this, the community starts to feel it. They start to notice that, wow, things are getting better and better and better at our healthcare organization, and they trust it more as well. So, how do you build something like this into your healthcare organization? So while I say step one is to block annual, semi-annual, quarterly events and activities first, really there's a pre-step of making sure that your organization has clearly defined the foundational execution systems. And then we create the cadence of activities that are part of each of those systems. And then we calendarize them so that they happen each and every year and they go on the calendar first. We don't try to fit them in later in the year because if we do, we know there's no space in the calendars if we put them in later. There's no space in a jar that's already full. So they go in first. So we block the foundational cycles first, the annual, semi-annual, quarterly. Then we add the organizational level monthly work. Then we add the weekly and daily systems. And then after we have that all calendarized, and in our partner organizations that we coach and guide through this process, it is the steering team. So their organization's steering team that really is the steward or the oversight of their organization's ongoing journey or improvement initiative, highly aligned with executing their strategic plan. So the steering team is the one that takes ownership for calendarizing these important activities for the year ahead. And so as we're coaching our partners right now, you can imagine that a lot of them are going through this process right now. Once that calendar is developed, then it's communicated throughout the whole organization, staff, providers, employees, everyone alike, leaders, everybody knows that this is what's going to happen in the year ahead. So we'll communicate the whole year in advance of what's happening in the organization, what the top strategic priorities are, what the goals are, and this aligned calendar of activities and events. And then each quarter, each month, maybe even weekly in the Friday Five, everyone is getting updates in real time. Yep, we said we were going to do this. And yep, we did. And yep, we said we were going to do this next. And yep, you can see it's on the calendar next. So this becomes part of an important communication loop all throughout the year as well. So again, that pre-step is making sure you have these execution systems defined in your organization. And if you don't have them or you need help with them, that's where an organization like ours, Capstone Leadership, comes in. So if you would like to consult with us on this, capstoneleadership.net, you can reach out to us on adopting these 4 systems. And we certainly are experts at helping healthcare organizations do that. But once we have those systems defined, then we can calendarize and set up this cadence of activity. So I'm wondering, if you asked yourself, what would become possible in our organization if everyone knew exactly what mattered most and when it was happening every week, every month, every quarter, every year without fail? So if you email us at info@capstoneleadership.net, we will send you a guide that provides further information on how your organization can adopt or improve a process like this as you move into 2026. And again, if your organization is truly stalled, struggling, or even surging, and you need expert planning and execution support designed specifically for small and rural healthcare organizations. Well tested, well proven over and over again to help organizations get unstuck, to overcome struggles, or to surge with more ease and speed and less chaos. Give us a call. We'd love to hear about your current situation and see what recommendations we have and what help we may be able to give. And as always, just a reminder to share this episode if you know colleagues that might be interested in this type of information, and to listen in each week for another episode each Wednesday. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.